Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. Sadly, the weekend's over. Hope you all had a good one. It's been a relatively uneventful week for me, although there have been a few things going on. I completed Red Dead Redemption 2. It's quite easily one of the best games I have ever played. When I say I've completed it, I completed the main story and the epilogue, which is almost as long as the main story. It took about 3 weeks, putting in 6 to 8 hours a day. I just couldn't tear myself away from it. And even though I've technically finished the game, there's still a ton of stuff to do. There's about a third of the game world area, which you never really visit during the course of the main story. So that's all still to explore. There's a ton of side quests and challenges to complete. So even though I actually finished the game about 3 or 4 days ago, I've still been playing it every day. It really is an astonishingly good game. Can't wait. Well, assuming it is going to come to the PC, I really hope it does come to the PC, because if it does, I will be playing it again. So, with Red Dead Redemption 2 more or less put to bed, I started looking around for something new to play, and of course, Fallout 76 was released last week. Now, I mentioned in last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles that I wasn't going to be rushing to get it until private servers became available. It turns out that I needn't really have worried about that, because PvP in Fallout 76 is sort of consensual, although at the same time I'm very glad I didn't rush out and get it as soon as it was available, because Rita did, and she's been streaming it since the day it was launched. And oh dear, wow, this is it, is it? This is your new Fallout game, is it, Bethesda? For those of you who haven't actually been paying attention and perhaps watching live streams or videos of people playing Fallout 76, I am very glad that I didn't rush out and buy it and start playing it the day it was released, for two reasons. One big and one kind of small. We'll start with the big reason first of all. The main reason that I am very glad I didn't jump on board the Fallout 76 train the second it left release station is because it's basically just a mod for Fallout 4. And it's a mod that Bethesda are charging full price for. What do you mean, Jingles? Well, basically what Fallout 76 is a modded version of Fallout 4 with some new art assets, some new 3D models, but mostly all of the existing assets and game engine from Fallout 4. Except what they've modded out are all of the things that made Fallout 4 interesting, amusing and fun to play. All of the characters, all of the story, it's all gone. And what they've put in to make up for that is multiplayer. And of course Bethesda are charging full price for their multiplayer mod of Fallout 4 with all of the story and characters taken out. But more on that whole multiplayer thing, because apparently, so I've heard, the game world in Fallout 76, state of West Virginia, is 4 times the size of the playable area of the state of Massachusetts and the city of Boston that was playable in Fallout 4. But the servers are limited to 25 players. It's not exactly massively multiplayer, is it? It's actually possible for you to sit down playing Fallout 76 all night and never see another player. So they've taken out all of the stuff that made it interesting and they've added multiplayer, but you might never see another player. So is it just me? I mean, I'm struggling to see the point. I really, really am. So anyway, that was my major issue with Fallout 76. Now for my minor issue. Although this minor issue may be a major issue depending on how you feel about it. All of the other Fallout games are set hundreds of years after the atomic wars that devastated the world. You emerge from your vault into a blasted, irradiated, toxic wasteland. And the people and creatures in the world of Fallout have suffered through generations, over 200 years, of exposure to radioactive fallout and all kinds of toxins and pollutants that have caused them to mutate. And this explains why you see things like giant rat scorpions, mutated bears, mole rats, and even death claws, as well as the super mutants and the ghouls wandering around the world of Fallout. Here's the thing though, Fallout 76 is only set 25 or so years after the bombs fell. That's barely time for one generation of mutations. So we're talking almost zero genetic drift. Yeah? With me so far? And yet when you emerge from Vault 76 into the wilds of the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia, the world is crawling with deathclaws, mole rats, hell, even giant flying dragons. I mean, the only explanation that makes any sense as to how these things could possibly be running around a world a mere 25 years after an atomic war is magic. That's it's magic did it. That's the only explanation that makes any sense. There's a wizard somewhere in a mountain in West Virginia just pumping out orcs and elves and goblins and all kinds of stuff. It's the only explanation that makes the slightest bit of sense. And it never had to be this way. Just don't set it 25 years after the war. Set it 200 years after the war, like all of the other Fallout games, when this sort of thing makes a little bit of sense. But for reasons known only to the developers, presumably so they could cash in on selling off cosmetic tricentennial skins, they've decided to set the game in the year 2076, the third anniversary of the American Revolution. Logic, reason, common sense, and all of the existing Fallout lore can all go and take a long jump off a short pier. Bethesda want to sell Stars and Stripes party hats to anybody dumb enough to pay full price for a Fallout 4 mod that takes all of the good bits out and gives you some seriously suspect multiplayer to make up for it. Unbelievable. Anyway, you might have noticed that I didn't put a Ring video up yesterday for World Warships, the community contributor contest, the winner of which gets to go to St. Petersburg and have their voice recorded and their likeness put into the game as a captain. Turns out there were some technical difficulties at Wargaming's end. They couldn't get the bonus code that activated the mission to work properly, so this week's round of the Ring has been postponed. There are only 5 of us left, by the way. Myself, Sea-Raptor, TC Freer, Pointy-Head Jedi, and UO-Cat. The next round is the semi-final. 2 more will be eliminated, and that will leave 3 of us in the final to decide who it is who's going to actually win and get the all-expenses-paid trip to St. Petersburg. So hopefully within 2 weeks we'll have a winner, and it'll be me. I mean, of course I want to win. I've been trying to get myself in World of Warships as a playable captain since the game came out of beta test. And I'm pretty sure a fair number of you want to see me in there as well. In fact, I've even seen people saying that they'd actually start playing World of Warships again if they could have me as the captain of their British battleships. So, you know, I'm doing this for you. Anyway, best of luck, of course, to the 4 other surviving contestants in the upcoming semi-final, which will probably be happening sometime this week. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. So, anyway, like I said, I've finished Red Dead Redemption 2, as much as anybody can say that they've actually finished Red Dead Redemption 2. Fallout 76 is basically just a bad joke from Bethesda, so I've been looking around for something else to play to while away the hours when I'm not actually sitting in front of the PC producing videos. And since there isn't a huge amount coming out on the PC in the immediate future that isn't from Electronic Arts, I had, well, basically when I got the PlayStation 4, I also had a look for reviews and recommendations on the best PS4 titles to get. So I've got Gran Turismo Sport, I've got Red Dead Redemption 2, I've got Horizon Zero Dawn, which is fantastic, by the way. But when you Google the essential PS4 titles, there are a couple of games that keep appearing on the list. One of them was called Until Dawn, and I'd never actually played it until today, when I thought, you know what, it's been sitting in the box for 3 weeks, let's actually see what it looks like. All of the reviews that I've read about this game said it was a great title and anybody who owns a PS4 must have this game in their library. So I thought, okay, what the hell, I'll go ahead and get it. And the premise of the game did actually sound quite intriguing. It's basically a cabin in the woods simulator. The idea is that there's a bunch of people in a cabin in the woods and there's a killer out there, and the choices that you make determine who's going to live and who's going to die, or how many of you are going to live and how many of you are going to die. And it sounded pretty good, so I thought, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. However, while I have to admit I have not actually played much of this game yet, I've only started playing it today, I am very rapidly coming to the conclusion that just because a game gets favourable reviews on a console does not necessarily mean that it would also get good reviews if it appeared on the PC. And this game, Until Dawn, is a prime example of the sort of thing that I'm talking about. I've never been a huge fan on the PC of the kind of game where most of the, for want of a better word, gameplay involves watching pretty CGI movies and then every now and then being invited to hit the correct key in a very short period of time in order to trigger the next pretty CGI movie cutscene. You don't really see that sort of thing very often on the PC. There have been a couple of games where this sort of thing was included as an element of the gameplay. For example, I think they did it in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. For example, Lara Croft's grappling with some bad guy, and then in the middle of the grapple, suddenly a prompt appears on screen, press X to break free, and if you don't press X in time, game over, you've been strangled. Yeah, it's not exactly compelling gameplay, is it? You don't see it on the PC very often for that very reason. In fact, in the few games on the PC where this kind of game mechanic makes an appearance, generally speaking, in every review of that game, this sort of thing gets singled out for some very, very heavy criticism, and justifiably so, because it's shit. And for that reason, thankfully, it's relatively rare on the PC. And when it does happen, it tends to happen on titles that have made the crossover from console. The problem with Until Dawn, one of the problems, there are many, is that this QuickTime event thing, where you watch something happen and then quickly have to press the right button in order to watch the next thing happen, that's all the game is. I mean, it has a brave stab at trying to fool you that your choices actually make any kind of meaningful difference, and that you do actually have control over the various different characters that you're playing. But when that control means we're running down a path in the woods, we can't leave the path, and then at some point we're going to be asked if we want to turn left or right. You know, if that's the extent of the interaction and choice that the game actually presents us with, you may as well be reading one of Ian Livingstone's interactive choose-your-own-adventure books from the 1980s. Because that, in a very, very pretty CGI dressed-up 21st century way, is exactly what this game is. It's a 21st century, very pretty choose-your-own-adventure book. Now, I mentioned that this was only one of the issues that this title has. I could have put up with that. I mean, it still wouldn't be good, but it wouldn't be as terrible as it was if the characters and the story had been compelling. I talked about this sort of thing in previous episodes of Mingles with Jingles. Games like, for example, What Became of Edith Finch, which is basically just an interactive storybook. The actual interaction is not huge, but you neither notice nor care, because the characters and the story that the game tells is so utterly compelling and engrossing that you don't realise that you're not actually playing much of a game. You're just too busy enjoying the story and meeting the characters. Until Dawn could have gotten away with the terrible gameplay if it had remembered to include characters that we actually care about and had a story that was worth telling. But it failed on both counts. The story is nothing special. It's just a bunch of kids in a cabin in the woods, and there's a killer out there trying to knock them all off one by one. Okay, the story's nothing special, but it's not necessarily bad. And it's certainly an interesting premise for a computer game. I don't think I can remember, off the top of my head, any other games. I mean, there have been countless movies that have used this story, but I don't think I've ever really seen it in a game. And so the fact that we're doing this in a computer game, rather than just watching it on the big screen, is certainly refreshing, and you might even say innovative. But it's going to live or die on how well it's implemented. And since we've already established that the gameplay is dog shit, the story kind of fails too. So that just leaves the characters. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. You see, the thing about Until Dawn is that unlike your traditional cabin-in-the-woods style horror movie, this is not just a bunch of high school jocks sneaking into a deserted shack in the woods in order to have sex and drink alcohol. No, these are not your average bunch of bratty teenagers. This is not even really a cabin in the woods. This is a ski lodge It has all the latest mod cons. It has climate control. It has a fully fitted stainless steel kitchen. These are rich kids. And I have never met a more hateful collection of spoiled, snot-nosed, hateful, entitled little shits in my entire life. And I'm supposed to be trying to keep them alive? Can we talk about this? Because I just want them all to die as quickly and messily as I can possibly manage. In fact, within an hour of starting to play this game, that's what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to save them. I was trying to feed them all to the serial killer as quickly and efficiently as I possibly could, just to get them to shut the fuck up. Within an hour, I just couldn't take any more whining about how expensive the insurance on their BMWs and Ferraris were. It's just, no. Can you all die, please? Here, let me help. This in a game where we're supposed to try to keep as many of them as possible alive until dawn. Let me remind you, by the way, this utter train wreck of a game is one of the best reviewed and most recommended games currently available on the PlayStation 4. Are console owners just very easy to please? Is that it? I don't get it. I mean, there have been some absolutely terrible games on the PC as well. Just take a look at all the shit that gets shoveled out onto Steam every month, but, well, nobody's reviewing those. And anybody who is reviewing them is telling you that they're terrible. But Until Dawn is one of the best reviewed titles available on the PlayStation 4, and is in the top 10 of just about everybody's lists of titles that you must own on the PlayStation 4. Why? It's terrible. It's awful. This is not just my opinion, by the way. The game is objectively bad. Oh, but Jingles, I've played it and I liked it. Well, congratulations. I'm very happy for you, but you like a bad game. It ticks all of the, oh my god, what the hell are you thinking of, boxes in game design. Minimal interaction, boring and repetitive gameplay, hateful characters that you have no sympathy for, and a pretty boring and hackneyed plot. It is an objectively bad game. And yet 97% of Google users liked this game. GameSpot gave it 8 out of 10, and Eurogamer gave it 4 out of 5. Now, I'm not here to really argue about whether or not a game is good or bad, because, well, there is no argument. It is an objectively bad game. But the fact that it got so consistently highly rated as a console title really intrigued me, because I have absolutely no doubt that if this game had not been released on console first, and was released as a PC title, the same people at GameSpot and Eurogamer who gave it 4 out of 5 and 8 out of 10 would have savaged it as a PC title. They would have written the most humiliatingly bad reviews of this game, because that's what it would deserve. You see, I'm looking at it as somebody who's used to playing games on the PC, and I'm just seeing this train wreck of a game, and I'm utterly mystified as to how it can be getting such good reviews. Now, my knee-jerk reaction here, as a former proud card-carrying member of the PC Gamer Master Race, is to just write it off as a case of console gamers are just so much easier to please than PC elitists. And yet, can that really be true when you look at console-exclusive titles like Red Dead Redemption 2, like Horizon Zero Dawn, like The Last of Us? Games that would be masterpieces regardless of the platform on which they were released. Can we really say that console gamers are just easy to please? And yet there is an undeniable difference between console gaming and PC gaming. If you look at, for example, games that were originally developed for the PC, and then years after being released on the PC, ported over to console, two prime examples, World of Tanks Mercenaries, and the upcoming World of Warships Legends. Now, I don't want to say these titles have been dumbed down for the console market, although I'm sure that's what most PC gamers would say. But there are differences between the PC gaming and the console gaming market, which is why PC games that get ported over to consoles tend to have bits cut out. They tend to be streamlined, to be more palatable, to people playing their games in front of a big screen TV while spread out on the couch with their hands on a controller. So I don't know. maybe there is an element of truth to the suggestion that the bar isn't perhaps set quite so high, in general, when it comes to a console title versus a PC title. And yet, there are still console titles out there that easily exceed the bar, even though they don't have to. Games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Horizon Zero Dawn, and The Last of Us. All of which are console-only titles which would easily be capable of exceeding the bar even if it hadn't been set so ridiculously low by turds like Until Dawn. Anyway, we're going to end this episode of Mingles with Jingles by answering some of your questions. First question this week comes from BT Ron, and he's talking about World of Warships here. He has a bunch of tier 10 ships, and he hasn't actually finished the missions yet for the legendary mods for those ships. Now, the missions say that they will expire on the 31st of December. Could you ask our fiendish overlords at Wargaming what will happen then? Will a new mission come up, or are they going to be available for an in-game resource? BT Ron, don't worry. This is simply due to the limitations of the mission system. The personal missions that you get to unlock these legendary mods have to come with an end date. That's just the way the personal missions work. What will happen on the 31st of December is that the end date of the missions will be extended for another 3 months. And then 3 months after that, they'll be extended for another 3 months. Basically, you keep the missions until either you complete them or you just give up and stop playing. So you don't have to worry. You're always going to be able to continue your progress grinding out the legendary mods for your tier 10 ships. Jimmy Cricket 93 says, "Hey Jingles, while watching your Assassin's Creed Odyssey series, I've enjoyed the historical tidbits of information throughout the videos. My question to you is, would you be able to do a war stories like section in your videos where you tell some of the lesser known stories of ancient history? Thanks from New Zealand." Yeah, sure. I mean, why the hell not? That's always kind of been the thing that kind of set my channel apart from other similar YouTube channels, in that I would always, well not always, but often try to put whatever you're watching into some kind of historical context, whether that be a ship, a tank, an aircraft, or in the case of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a Greek mercenary running around Sparta and Athens during the Peloponnesian Wars. I've always been a fan of history, and I try to shoehorn it in wherever possible. And I'm very pleased that so many of you seem to enjoy hearing about it as well, because it seems to be a common thread. Anytime I do go off on a historical one, the comments do appear to be generally very supportive of my doing that. So it's good that so many of you also appear to have the same kind of interest in history as I do. Now, as for whether or not I would do... See, I'm not entirely sure what you're asking, Jimmy. Are you asking for more of the same? In which case, hell yes, definitely. Or are you asking for a separate sort of war stories style video? Which isn't something that I think I would really like to do, because I kind of like just surprising you, with shit that I know. At random points throughout existing videos, just when you least expect it. I mean, if that's what you want, then yeah, absolutely. More of the same. Next question. Sean says, "Jingles, if you were so fond of tanks as a child, why the hell didn't you join the Royal Tank Corps instead of the Royal Navy?" I wasn't actually that interested in tanks as a child. When I was a child, it was all about dinosaurs and Greek mythology. I mean, I was interested in soldiers and stuff like that. I read Commando comics and stuff like that when I was a kid, but I was really enthusiastic. First, dinosaurs, then Greek mythology. Then when I got into my teens, I really started getting into combat aircraft. Tanks and warships actually came on very, very late. In fact, I never really started getting into tanks until I started playing World of Tanks. Yeah, I know, it was World of Tanks that got me interested in tanks. Hopefully that's true of a lot of you. I mean, hopefully you're not just all about playing the game, you're also interested in learning about the history of the machines in the game. A common thread in my videos, I think you'll find. As for why I joined the Navy rather than the Army, whether that was tanks, infantry, engineers, whatever. Well, you see, did you know that there's a laundry on board a Royal Navy warship? And until we handed Hong Kong back over to China, we also had a tailor. A Hong Kong Chinese tailor on board every British warship. Yes. We also have air conditioning on British warships. On some of the older ships it's not very good, but we have it. We have 3 hot meals cooked a day in the galley. So if you join the Navy, when you deploy, you get to sleep in the same bed every night, in clean, freshly laundered sheets, with air conditioning, having just eaten a lovely hot meal. Now, this is not something that you can say that you are going to enjoy on a regular basis when you join the army. If you're very, very lucky, you might have a tank to sleep in, or to sleep under. Most of the time, when you're operational, you're going to be sleeping in a ditch, in a bush, in the rain, in the snow, having eaten cold compo rations, wearing the same uniform that you've been wearing for the last 2 weeks. Also, let us not forget, I have travelled the world extensively during my 22 years in the Royal Navy. I have visited every continent, sailed every sea and ocean, well, almost every sea, but every ocean, visited exotic places that I would never have dreamed of being able to afford to visit if the Navy hadn't been paying me to go there. In the British Army, by contrast, for a very, very long time, the most exotic place the average British soldier could ever hope to visit were the Central European plains of Germany. Although things have perked up a little bit now, the average British squaddie did, until very recently, get to visit some nice hot places like Iraq and Afghanistan. So you can see, when I put it like that the choice between joining the Army or the Navy really wasn't a very hard choice indeed. Of course, the downside to joining the Navy is that there are no rear echelon motherfuckers in the Navy. It doesn't matter whether you're stacking blankets in the main store, piloting a Hoover as a steward cleaning out the officers' cabins, or manning the radar and sonar systems. You're all on the same ship. But I feel that is a relatively small price to pay for the creature comforts that we did enjoy on a daily basis while serving for 22 years as a proud member of the crew of one of Her Majesty's big grey war canoes. And that, boys and girls, is pretty much all I have time for today. I'm sure there's something vitally important that I've completely forgotten to mention, and I have equally no doubt that I will remember what it is once the video has been rendered and is half uploaded. But hey, what are you going to do? If it's that important, I'll mention it in a post on Facebook and Twitter. Anyway, that is it for today. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Mingles with Jingles, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.